Hello friends, welcome back. Now today I'm talking about Elton John's 1986 concert tour of Australia with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, and it culminated in a live performance which was recorded for posterity on this double album and also a single CD. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have this as a box set, which you may do, which comes in this box set with this insert as well, which I'll be looking at in detail in a moment. Now, this was quite a significant moment in Elton's career because he was facing a health crisis related to his voice. And he's written in his book that he thought this might be the last time he ever performed in public. So fortunately for us fans, it wasn't. He's given us lots of great music since, but it was a turning point in his career. So let's just dig a little bit deeper as to what was going on here. Now, this was a tour in 1986 with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, starting in November in Brisbane and finishing in Sydney on December the 14th. This final concert, an important night for Elton, and we'll discover what happened just before that in a moment, but this was broadcast live on national television there. Now, so this was a grueling tour for Elton, covering 5 cities. There were 27 shows. As well as his own band, there was the full Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. So there were 101 people on stage for each of these concerts. So we can imagine the pressure on him as a performer and also the technical challenge this posed. And apparently each of the instrumentalists in the orchestra had to be individually mic'd for this all to be sort of balanced in the sort of technical area to get the sound right, both for the live audience at home and for the recording. Now, the background to this is important. Now, in Elton's book, Me, which I'm sure you've read and enjoyed, he talks about what happened immediately before this tour and this concert. And he'd been having problems with his voice. And he writes, I had absolutely no idea what was going to happen when he started to sing on stage sometimes. Sometimes it would be fine. Other times I would rasp and croak and wheezily fail to hit the notes. So clearly something was happening, and this was probably a result of his grueling schedule, which he'd had, because he's always been a great touring artist, as we know, and a wonderful artist to see live. Elton has never shortchanged his fans, and always in his concerts you get value for money. You get a big set of songs, sometimes singing as many as 30 songs live, sometimes without even an interval. So he'd been to this doctor, and the doctor had told him that he'd got cysts on his vocal cords, and it could be something serious. They could be cancerous. There was a possibility he might not even speak again. So imagine how he must have felt, and especially as sort of his voice was his life. That's what we've all loved. So what a moment for Elton to have to face all this pressure of this tour. So let's see what was happening at these concerts. Now, I've just called up the set list for what was happening there. This is for the actual final concert in 1986 on December the 14th. Now, the first half of the show was Elton and his band. And what's significant about this is there are some final performances of some of his songs here, and some kind of slightly left field choices. So he opened with One Horse Town from Blue Moves, and that was the last time he performed that live. What a shame, actually, because it's a great live song. Then fairly predictable, Rocket Man, Bitches Back, Daniel. Then he does a Leon Russell song, A Song for You, which is a nice song, actually, and a tribute to Leon Russell. Then some more recent choices, Blue Eyes, I guess that's why they call it the blues, The Inevitable Benny and the Jets. Then you wouldn't expect this one, would you, from Leather Jackets, Heartache All Over the World, he does live for the last time. Then Sad Songs. Then an interesting one here from Ice on Fire, This Town, a quite decent song, that one, last live performance. So unfortunately, we haven't got a record of that. I haven't found that on YouTube. And then I'm Still Standing. That rounds off the first half. So these songs don't appear on this collection. These were the band songs only. Elton then goes off and he comes back on with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. But there was some drama before this concert started, as Elton talks about in his book. What happened immediately before this concert was about to start? I stormed out of the final gig at the Sydney Entertainment Centre, which was broadcast live on TV, minutes before the show was about to start. He could hear the orchestra playing the overture. He passed Phil Collins apparently on the way, and Phil said to him, "Well, where are you going?" And Elton shouted, "Home." Then he walked out. Well, fortunately, he came back. Obviously the nerves were getting to him a lot here, and you can understand that because of the pressure he must have been under, both with this massive audience, apparently 10 million people watching, and his health fears. Well, thank goodness he did come back, because actually what we get is a quite thrilling concert. Now, you can tell his voice is not 100%. It's a little bit raspy on some numbers, although that does introduce quite a vulnerability to some of the tracks, which makes them quite endearing. So these are unusual recordings. They're not the perfect version of songs, but I think it comes over pretty well. There's one or two instances where it goes up particularly high, and he doesn't sing that. He kind of reharmonizes it lower down. Well, that's okay, isn't it? But generally speaking, the quality of the recordings is still pretty good. So he comes on in the second half with the orchestra, and his focus is on some of those early Paul Buckmaster string arrangements from the Elton John album. We get 60 Years On, I Need You to Turn To, and The Greatest Discovery. All three pretty good quality songs. 60 Years On, kind of Elton's sort of Beatles moment in a way. It's just evocative. That song could sit on Sergeant Pepper, I always think. Then we had Tonight from Blue Moves, which is a big sort of production number, later covered by George Michael. And Sorry Seems to Be the Word from Blue Moves. Then he goes back to the Elton John album for The King Must Die, all working pretty well. Now, interesting choice next, because the next thing he sang was Cold as Christmas, which of course, as we know, came from the Ice on Fire album. When you listen to this on YouTube, it's actually a pretty decent performance, actually. He seems quite, calm, confident singing this, but it doesn't make it onto here, and it doesn't make it onto the CD version either, which is a bit of a shame. Like to hear that one. You don't hear that one live that often. Anyway, he goes back to Take Me to the Pilot, which is, of course, from the Elton John album, one of his sort of staple early songs. He then does Carla Etude, which is from The Fox. Now, this is an all-instrumental one. You'd have thought it would have been ideal one to do with the orchestra, but again, that doesn't make it, unfortunately, onto the CD. You can hear it on YouTube. Pretty decent version again. Then we've got Tiny Dancer from, of course, Madman Across the Water. Have Mercy on the Criminal from Don't Shoot Me. And then another one that doesn't make it onto here. It's Slow Rivers, which, of course, he did as a duet with Cliff Richard. Maybe not the most confident version he's done there, so perhaps that's why they didn't put it on, but again, it would be nice to have the whole thing. Then we go Madman Across the Water, brilliant track, as we know, title track of that album. Track 26 was Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. Now, he does talk about this in the book. Elton says that the thought that he may never sing again carried him through the performance. The highlight was Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. He says, my voice was rough and raspy, but I don't think I've ever performed that song better. It was always pretty show-stopping, but with the orchestra thundering away that night, every line seemed to have a new meaning, a different emphasis. So what a brilliant version of that song under the circumstances. On the album, they've moved this to the end as kind of a curtain falling performance. But actually, in the concert, there were some more songs after that. We got Candle in the Wind, Burn Down the Mission, of course, from Tumbleweed Connection. Then he finished with Your Song and Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. That one, final one, didn't make it onto the album. But I would recommend this as an interesting album to listen to. The vinyl itself, when you put it on now, is a little bit underpowered. You really need to bump up the volume to get the full effect. probably go for the CD version. I haven't got that. I'm going to get it, I think, just to see what the sound quality is like on there. Also enjoy these on YouTube. Put them on your main TV set, maybe bump up the volume if the neighbours don't mind, and enjoy that performance. I'll put a few links below so you can enjoy that. What do we think about this? Well, I've always enjoyed Elton working with orchestras. A lot of his early music was written with an orchestral background, and then he kind of went away from that after the 1970s and didn't really return to that. But he has done several live shows with different orchestras, and I think it's always worked really well. Those early arrangements, Paul Buckmaster and James Newton Howard as well, they really enhance a lot of his music, especially the ballads. So his music does lend itself to this sort of performance. And it would have been quite a privilege to be there that night to see the contrast between his band performances and his orchestral performances. Were you there that night? If so, add your comments below, because I'd like to know what you thought of the performance. And what do you think overall of this CD or this box set or album set? What's your favourite performance on here? I would rate it pretty good, and it's good to have this record of this unique occasion in Elton's performing live. Well, those are my thoughts. Send yours in. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, we're still standing. So here's the limited edition box set of the Live in Australia. Let's have a look inside the double album to begin with. And this has got a full track listing and full set of lyrics here, plus some pictures from the concert itself. Here's what the vinyl looks like, and they were looking at the centerpiece. Opens right out to some more text there, a little bit of background from James Newton Howard, and some more photographs. On the other side are some newspaper headlines of the concerts, some more text, more pictures of what's going on there, and the final page is some picture covers of some of Elton's studio albums.